I remember back in 2014 when the original Destiny was first released. It was a special day for me as it was also the day I purchased my PlayStation 4. I remember being super excited at the time because I was finally able to afford to buy the bloody thing. Recently, Destiny's sequel, Destiny 2, was released, and I have enjoyed my time with it. They seem to have listened to a lot of the criticism of the original game and improved upon it, but today is not the day to talk about Destiny 2. Though if I have one criticism, it's what on earth is that? It just looks so awful. Like, what are those wings? Why are they there? This armor could actually look alright if it wasn't for those fucking wings. It just makes the entire thing look so shit. What was I talking about? I have never talked about Destiny before on this channel, nor have I ever shown any gameplay, but what some of you may not know is that I am a huge fan of this game, which wasn't always the case. So before I properly jump into the next chapter of this franchise, I wanted to take some time to reflect on the journey my guardian and I have been on over the past 3 years, and how much my relationship with the game has changed, and how the game itself has changed over time. If you asked me several years ago if I wanted there to be a sequel to Destiny, my answer would have been, bloody no way! But over time, I have grown to love and adore this game. So before we part ways, let's take one last look at the Destiny experience. Cast your minds back to September 2014. The release of Destiny was just around the corner and Bungie fans were eagerly anticipating its release. I had never played the Halo games because I never owned an Xbox, so I didn't have the same expectations going into Destiny as the more passionate Bungie fans had. Then I played the game and I actually enjoyed it at first. I even made a first impressions video on YouTube at the time, and the only negative thing I had to say, I kind of wish this game was all in third person, but having that said, like that's just a little nitpick. Like, it's not anything that's wrong with the game, it's just something I wish was the case. I wish you could actually choose to play the game in either first person or third person. In hindsight though, what the fuck was I talking about?
I don't even have time to explain why I don't have time to explain.
Yeah, what a great bit of dialogue that is. 10 out of 10. As stated in the intro, I haven't always liked the game, and the experience quickly went downhill for me. The sheer lack of story, content, and the general repetition of the game had got to me after a couple of sessions. And after the initial awe of the game's solid shooting mechanics and breathtaking environments, I saw vanilla Destiny for what it was. A competent but extremely shallow shooter. It built its world excellently in the opening cutscene, but never expanded from that setup. The game was nothing. No story, no interesting characters or enemy types. The game was just a playground to endlessly shoot aliens and steal their shit. Each mission was the same. You would go to a location, deploy Ghost to scan something, and then fight off several waves of enemies. Even when the occasional cutscene played, nothing happened in them. It was just characters standing there talking.
We're searching for the Black Garden.
Why?
We seek to destroy the darkness at its heart.
You want to turn it into a battleground?
And it would have been fine if what they were saying actually meant anything, but instead it was just dribble that had been written in the game to give it an illusion of story. And I kept playing the game for a bit, as I heard the end game was crazy. but it never came. It was PvP, which didn't really interest me. The strikes were good, but like the rest of the game, I got over it once I'd done them a couple of times. And then there were random quests in patrol mode, which kept me occupied for about 20 minutes, but all that crazy endgame content everyone was talking about wasn't even in the fucking game on release. I just stopped playing the game when I got to the Black Garden, even though I knew I was at the end of the game's campaign. This game had so much potential. There was so many interesting ideas, but none of those ideas ever made it to the original game. And all the incredible lore that had been written for this universe was all on these fucking stupid grimoire cards, which weren't even in the game. You had to access them on Bungie's website. Oh, so dumb. Bill Nye was providing expository dialogue at several points of the game that most of the time just didn't even make sense, and still to this day I have no idea what he is talking about.
I could tell you of the great battle centuries ago.
I don't even have time to explain why I don't have time to explain.
What started out as a promising experience became a bland and uninspired gun simulator, and I didn't care for it. It was no good. Little did I know that when year 2 came around, I would be having a completely different experience.
His name is Oryx, the Taken King. And he's coming for you, Guardian.
At E3 2015, Bungie announced The Taken King, the third expansion after The Dark Below and House of Wolves. The Taken King would kick off year 2, and what I saw of it intrigued me. The trailer and gameplay from E3 looked impressive. I was excited to see something that resembled a story. Also, the gameplay clips looked great. The missions looked like they had a bit of variety to them, and the new subclasses looked interesting. And even though they looked like the same enemy types, the idea of the Taken was interesting to me. So at some point between then and the Taken King's eventual release in September, I decided to give the game a second chance. I reinstalled the game, and I finally got around to finishing Destiny 1's campaign. It was at this point that I also made a few new friends who were playing the game quite regularly, which was something I didn't have the first time, and having that social element changed the entire Destiny experience for me, and it was at this point that I started to appreciate the game a little more. During the next couple of months, I played Destiny quite regularly. I logged in every day at one point to do the daily heroic story missions for the reward. I played the strikes and PvP regularly with my friends in a fire team. I was really starting to enjoy my time with the game a lot more than I did the first time around. The social experience I had during this time with a fire team that regularly played is what got me invested enough to purchase the Taken King and Destiny's first 2 expansions. September then came, and with it, Destiny 2.0. This is truly when my love affair with the game began. This update fixed a few of the problems I had with the original vanilla game. One of the big changes was the XP and light system for those newer Destiny players. Essentially, you had one light level, which was determined by the strength of your gear. For someone like me who didn't get a chance to play the raids because I had no friends, I wasn't able to get access to higher levels such as the top tier strikes because I could never get the exotic gear required to boost my level up high enough. With 2.0, the level system was split into 2 separate numbers. Players leveled up via XP, and when they reached each level XP cap, they leveled up and also earned a mote of light, while the light level was a separate number which was worked out by the average light level of the equipped gear. The beauty of this system was that it now meant that areas of the game were now able to be accessed quicker because everyone was now able to level up to the maximum level regardless of their light level, with certain sections of the game, such as the Nightfall strikes or raids, still requiring a higher level to access. The other big changes in the update included the new quest system, which was implemented for the Taken King, as well as into all of the Year 1 content. While it didn't change the structure of the original campaign or its missions, this quest system did provide more context to the original missions of the game and allowed for more interactivity with the characters from the game. There were also other side quests that required Guardians to complete extra objectives in Patrol mode and Crucible to get better weapons and armor. The game also brought the infamous change in voice actor for Ghost. Dinklage was out and Nolan North was in.
You're alive. You don't know how long I've been looking for you. I'm a ghost. Actually, now I'm your ghost. You're alive. You don't know how long I've been looking for you. I'm a ghost. Actually, now I'm your ghost. And you?
Dinklage was actually replaced due to his availability. Those might remember that Dinklebot had no lines of dialogue in the original first 2 expansions. North does try to add a little more to the character, but at the end of the day, he is just a robot, and to me, it doesn't matter whether they kept Dinklebot or not, it's the same character and the same dialogue either way. The update also included a lot of minor changes as well, with weapon balances across all weapon types and game modes, as well as some minor changes to the perk system. Overall, the game felt fresh and exciting. The game's universe and narrative felt a little bit more fleshed out, but it was when the Taken King dropped that shit was about to get real, and Year 2 was about to begin.
Oryx, Crota's father. He smells the blood of his son on your hands.
This was the point where I fell in love with the game. The Taken King had finally arrived on September 15th, 2015. I had spent weeks preparing for this, and I was ready to experience what seemed like the first story this game had seen since the opening cutscene. I quickly played through the first 2 expansions, which were fine, but then I clicked on the first Taken King mission, and I was blown away. The opening cutscene looks like something out of Star Wars. We have this amazing space battle sequence where the Awoken are going up against Oryx's big fuck-off mothership thing. This opening sequence sets up the threat of Oryx and the Taken really well, and I was genuinely upset when the Awoken were just obliterated. Not because I cared about any of them, because as we know from Destiny 1, the characters in this game were just nothing. But I was upset because the Awoken were not fleshed out and now won't ever get the chance to be either. This is my only issue with this opening. I wanted to learn more about Mara Sov, the Queen of the Awoken, and the abilities she and her brother, what's his name again? I want to see these characters and this species fleshed out, but I don't get to now, which is a shame. The Taken King's campaign was much more cinematic than the original game or its first 2 expansions. The whole scenario had much more scale to it. Rather than just shooting endless waves of enemies, Oryx and his army felt like a real threat and really shaked up the game. The missions themselves also had more variety to them, with really great level design and scripted moments. I really liked the later levels on the Dreadnought. Speaking of the Dreadnought, I really loved this location for patrols. The enemies were a little bit tougher than that of the patrol locations of the rest of the game. It made it a bit more fun and challenging to patrol on the Dreadnought. The Taken King also introduced my favourite addition to the game, the swords, which are just fantastic. It also introduced a new subclass to each of the main classes. I haven't mentioned this so far, but my main guardian in the game is a warlock. So this new subclass for me was Stormcaller, which essentially turned me into Emperor Palpatine. Previously, I had used Voidwalker, but ever since the Taken King, I have just used Stormcaller because look how cool it is! The Hunter had Night Stalker, which essentially gave the Hunter a really OP bow and arrow, and the Titans got Sunbreaker. I continued to play Destiny every night for a couple of weeks, playing with my regular fire team at the time. But at this point in my journey, I finally got to give Prison of Elders a go, and I really enjoyed it. It's 5 rounds of fighting off waves of enemies and completing simple objectives. These are sometimes challenging and you do need 3 people to complete some of the objectives on time. I enjoy Prison of Elders and if done properly can take less than an hour and can give some really great rewards, so it is good for a grind. Also around this time I gave up on Crucible altogether as I just didn't care and my fire team was also beginning to lose interest. Over the next 12 months I played Destiny on and off. For a while there, Destiny was my go-to multiplayer game along with GTA 5. However, things changed once Overwatch was released and I decided to take a little break from the game. At E3 2016 they announced Rise of Iron, a new expansion to the game. Like with the Taken King, I got excited over this new DLC. While the Taken King's opening sequence seemed inspired by Star Wars, Rise of Iron seemed inspired by the likes of Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones. It had a more fantasy element to it. Rise of Iron also marked the beginning of Year 3, the final year of Destiny. I went into this expansion with the same expectations of story and scale as the Taken King. However, what I ended up getting was a little disappointing. Rise of Iron's campaign never really hit the same heights as the Taken King. The expansion introduced a new area, the Plaguelands, which I honestly didn't find as interesting as the Dreadnought. The expansion attempts to expand upon the Iron Lord mythos, and I did appreciate a certain section of Destiny's lore was being expanded upon, but still a little disappointed that the Awoken aren't really expanded upon. However, I didn't really find the story that interesting. This expansion came across as about as fleshed out as The Dark Below or House of Wolves, but it had the polish of the Taken King. So it does sound like I am hating on this expansion, so let me quickly explain myself. The Taken King was a huge shake-up for the game. With the 2.0 changes and the story changes, it really shaped Destiny into what it is today, and paved the way for the natural evolution of the game with Destiny 2. While I stand by my opinions on Rise of Iron, I do want to add that the reason I don't think it lives up to the Taken King is due to the fact that nothing in the game changed or evolved with its release. Which is also fine, but I just thought I'd reiterate this as it does seem like I am hating on it. I did actually enjoy it, really I did, it's nothing that special. One notable addition was that of the new social area, Fellwinter Peak, which looks and sounds like something out of Game of Thrones. And it also became the home of the Iron Banner tournament. Yay. But this place is just beautiful, and it probably was my favourite of the 3 social areas. Look, there are wolves just hanging out. The expansion also included the standard new and updated strikes, quests, public events, crucible modes, etc. And also is noteworthy for the return of the fucking Gjallarhorn that everyone lost their minds over in Year 1.
I got the Gjallarhorn! I got the Gjallarhorn! Yes! Yes! Fuck life! Fuck life!
While Rise of Iron was a little disappointing, it did deliver what Destiny does best, and that is more Destiny. And for a time, it did make me play the game again. However, I was back to once again playing by myself, as my friends didn't jump on board with this expansion. So, Rise of Iron ended up being a brief, casual fling, but nothing more.
It is yours, young wolf. You are the first of a new generation. Take your place as an Iron Lord.
I honestly didn't really play Destiny that much during year 3, and it wasn't until one of my regular gaming buddies finally bought the game in the latter half of the year that I managed to get back into it, and I didn't realise how much I had missed it until then. Destiny is a social game, and without that element it can lose the charm that makes it what it is. After the disappointing Rise of Iron expansion, I thought that was it for me, but playing the game socially again reignited my love for the game and this universe. Being able to play through the campaigns, both the original and the Taken Kings, as well as the usual strikes, Prison of Elders, etc., was super fun, and it was nice to play with someone who was experiencing this game for the first time. I also used this opportunity to play my hunter some more, which was a nice way to shake things up. Also, around the time I got back into the game, Bungie did their Destiny 2 live event thing, where they showed off the trailer from the new game, and my god, how good did it look. The idea of Destiny 2 having an actual story is so exciting, and I couldn't wait to see this universe expanded upon. Plus, the idea of the Guardians being brought to their knees in their darkest hour sounds like a good time. In conclusion, I have a very love-hate relationship with this game. While I disliked the game at first, I have grown to enjoy my time with it over the last couple of years. And I also need to praise Bungie's efforts at working on addressing many of the criticisms the game had. I still do, however, have a couple of questions left from the original game that I hope future sequels and expansions explore. Where is the Exo Stranger? What has she been doing since we defeated the Black Heart or whatever the fuck that thing was? She just gave us a gun and fucked off, never to be seen again.
I don't even have time to explain why I don't have time to explain.
Again, like with the Awoken Queen, she is an interesting character that is just wasted potential. And also, what the hell is Eris Morn talking about at the end of The Taken King? Whose side is she on? The Taken King seems to set her up at being a future villain or something like that. So hopefully this is something that isn't forgotten about in Destiny 2. What's she on about?
I don't even have time to explain why I don't have time to explain.
It has been a great 3 years, but it is now time to move on to a new adventure. Destiny 2 is Bungie's second chance with the franchise, and I have had an awesome time with it. I have finished the campaign with my Warlock, and am enjoying all the post-campaign content. Maybe one day I will talk about Destiny 2 in detail, but I did enjoy the story, and the gameplay is still fantastic. One thing that I really wanted from the sequel was everything was in the game, and I didn't have to rely on any external sources like YouTube or Bungie's website to understand just what the fuck is going on. And I think Destiny 2 has delivered on that. However, they still didn't bring back the Queen. She's currently presumed dead or missing, so give us more of this. I hope you enjoyed this video. I set out to create a video that acts as both a retrospective and a reflection on my personal experience with the game, and I would love to know your experience with the game. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe for more content that is probably like this, or it could be completely different, I don't know. Also, a big thank you to the following YouTubers, as I did have to borrow some of their footage as I didn't have all the footage needed for every moment of this video. I will leave links to all their channels in the description below, so if you love Destiny, please go and check them out. Also, I have a gaming channel where I play games and stuff. That sounds fun, doesn't it? So that will also be linked below. Basically, everything I have mentioned for the past 30 seconds will be linked down below, and you can do any of those things or none of them. It's literally up to you. I don't care, but thanks for watching this. I appreciate it. Bye everyone.